There's two, and we talked about Point Blank before,
Mm-hmm.
and I said my most famous scene in history of somebody murdering an inanimate object was in that movie of Lee Marvin murdering the bed when he did it. The second, my second favorite of all time of somebody murdering inanimate objects is in this movie of Steve McQueen taking a shotgun to the police car.
Oh, okay.
Is the most beautiful, just murder the hell out of it.
I mean, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I think James Garner is in that scene. I heard he was on the set and he got to do like an extra role as a driver. So
If you need somebody to do a stunt driving, James Garner,
it's sort of weird. It's a
He
weird
loved-
scene in a movie, but it's definitely like probably the high point of the film. So we're not going to let you get away with not checking out our episode. We're going to talk about Steve McQueen and Sam Peckinpah's
Yes,
The Getaway.
our first time talking about Sam Peckinpah. Let's do it.
Right, welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hey, I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for finding us. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Hey, the show is on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow us that way. Contact us that way as well. We do have a Patreon. Check that out as for great deals. Check it out to tell us what to do. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite Steve McQueen movies. I'm glad you appreciate it. It's over 50 years old. 50 years old.
Oh, God, it's just hitting that. It's
50
just
years
hitting
old.
50.
Right, yeah.
Need to get some balloons.
Getaway.
After being granted parole, criminal Doc McCoy
Doc.
owes a debt and is forced to rob another bank. When the heist goes awry, Doc and his wife Carol are forced on the run with a bag full of money and a shoddy plan to escape to Mexico. Now they must contend with cops on their tails, as well as an even more crooked criminal looking for more than his fair share of the cash.
Now, and another reason why I wanted to critique this movie is because I wanted to critique another movie of Kyle with Ben Johnson in it.
Yeah, the Ben Johnson cinematic universe is building slowly. What's funny to me is I didn't know he was in the movie, and this is my first time watching it. I didn't realize he
this
was
is
in
even
it.
better for me,
But
yeah.
the moment his name showed up, I was like, no! I was literally yelling your name from my basement, like, that's scumbag. And I have nothing against Ben Johnson, but now I have something against Ben Johnson. He's a great actor, but when he shows up, I'm just pissed.
So he was in Terror Train as the conductor. He's probably the best part of it. And then he's, Sam the Lion in the Last Picture Show. But here, he plays a really awful dude.
Yeah?
And he does it really convincing. He does that sly, just slowly drinks his bourbon and master of the world and kind of thing.
Had he been featured more in the finished product, I think I would have seen him as like the overall highlight of the movie. For me, the slimiest part of this movie, and I say that with all respect in the world, the slimiest part of this movie was Al Lettieri, who played Rudy Butler,
And he
the
gets the-
spurned criminal.
Who had a great year in 72? He did, because he had a great death in Godfather as well.
Yeah, I was when I saw him in the movie, I'm like, oh my god, it's so.
Yeah, who had a great year in 72? He did.
Yeah, and so I mean, I got to imagine that making that movie with El Lettieri and Sam Peckinpah, both alcoholic at the time, probably turned into quite a bit of a roozy kind of a time. So it's funny to know like the background of this movie with those two guys both suffering from alcoholism while making the movie, not remembering much of the experience, and then you've got Steve McQueen and Ali MacGraw who had an affair during the film and ended up marrying.
Yeah.
What was happening on the set of this movie? I gotta wonder.
It's chaotic. That's why I think it looks chaotic too. But Sam does that. It's almost a hot mess kind of a movie because what I like about Sam style is he does this editing trick of showing you fast forward a little bit and then come back. Like when he gets out of jail and he show him go in the pool, jumps in the pond.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
then cuts back and then he walks or something. He does that with action. Like you see this shotgun blast before he's the shot. So he does this lot of jump cuts, which is kind of his signature thing. But it's so fascinating to see that. It's one of the I like about the movies.
He does that with Doc and Carol escaping, and then he'll like cut in the middle of action to Rudy and Fran and their captives. He cuts back and forth between them in the oddest moments, and I'm not saying bad moments. I'm just saying it's like when you wouldn't normally do it. To the point where like I'm interested in one of the actions, and then they intrude, and I'm like, no, I want to see. Oh wait, what are you guys doing here? Like he kind of this wouldn't work. This kind of editing choice wouldn't work if the A and B stories didn't both have equal weight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if one of these sections was boring, then it would be really rough because they'd keep cutting to a part where you're like, oh god, not more of this. Like the nice thing about it is that I'm equally interested in Doc and Carol, and I'm also wondering what is this disgusting Rudy doing
with Sally Struthers.
with Sally Struthers.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in like. I hate him so much in this movie
Oh,
because
yeah,
he literally kidnaps the doctor
Throwing
and his
chicken
wife,
wings at her.
and then he proceeds to like. I mean,
Abuse
I'm
both.
almost just as mad as Sally Struthers' character for like what she does to her husband because it was so infuriating to watch that play out on film. But at the same time, what do I always say? Likable or interesting? None of those characters are likable, but they are very interesting.
Right. And I think Sam is one of those people, like, he's very stubborn in his ways.
Mm-hmm.
He's very much an anti-feminist, and it's a lot of misogyny in his films, and established, you could find a lot of that researching. But like I said, his style, I like that style. Fast forward, cut back, jump, whatever you think. And then the trickery of usually when you do shotgun blasts and everybody's shooting up, you want to show the action, the speed, but he always slows it down. Like, you want to savor that. Especially when the guy gets shotgun blast to like the cigarette vending machine, and you hold it, and like it shows the gaudiness, but also like you want to be repulsed at it at the same time. You're like, whoa.
Well, and that playful way of playing with the editing might be one of the reasons this film got a PG rating. Because it's a pretty bloody movie. It's not as bloody as the Peck and Paw that I'm aware of.
Not like
you know?
Wild Bunch or like,
Yeah, or like I always think of Straw Dogs, a movie that I've only seen bits and pieces of, but like very like bloody at times. Like
Yes.
that kind of extreme violence is something I expected to see more in the film. But the jump cutting and the playful editing that they do makes it so that you can't honestly like remember the gore and the violence that's in the movie, which might have led to the film getting a PG. Because the MPAA looked at this later on and they actually said we were probably wrong in giving this a PG. And they probably were.
But it's sold.
I can see why.
It's sold there, right? You're like, Steve McQueen is a bad guy with a shotgun, and I think the staple photo was him with a shotgun and the suit and the flaming car behind him and everything, and that's sells the movie.
It's iconic.
This is I don't know, is it a Western? Because Sam Peckinpah did Wild Bunch, and then a lot of Western characters like Dub Taylor, who like operated the hotel. He's a very much Western character. Ben Johnson's very much a Western.
And
kind
who shows up at the ending?
And Slim Pickens at the end. So
what in the wide world of sports is he doing here?
Yes, yeah. Which is kind of like at the end, it's like a little treat at the end. It's
Yep.
like a dinner mint at the end.
He was one again where like Mickey Rourke in the film Thursday we talked about last week. He was one of those guys. I saw his name in the credits and completely forgot he was in the movie because we go 2 hours pretty much before we see him. But man, when he shows up, that made the ending for me. Like any issues I had throughout the film, that made the ending for me.
Only a Western guy, a rancher, would know when you're contemplating making life choices that you kneel down and just start counting the dirt.
Yep.
Well, I don't know. I'll take the 10 grand.
So back to your Western question, though.
Yeah, Western.
I'm going to throw you another question of another movie. You tell me if this movie is a Western,
All right.
Hell or High Water.
Western.
Then The Getaway is.
Okay.
Because they're. I'm not saying they're the same movie, but they very much deal with the same elements,
Flavor.
and the same. Yeah, like again, we've got guys on the run from the police. Now, this movie we focus on two sets of people on the run instead of the police, but we get the same overall like cat and mouse chase that's being done. They're both the exact same realm of movie, same genre. So if you say Hell or High Water is, then The Getaway is, and I agree with you. I do believe that the movie is a Western.
Now, this has similar elements like Bonnie and Clyde, which came out about 5 years before this movie of, robbing a bank and bandits and a love team on. But where that was almost of a romanticism of it, almost like a political statement, I think this is just an action-oriented, even though I think this is a political movie. Sam Peckinpah does a little bit of a political ideal in this, but I think it's not a romantic version of it. Sam won't do that.
No, he doesn't seem interested in that.
It's a little more interested in the freedom of telling everybody, giving the thumb up to everybody.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Well, it's hard to know which parts of it were Sam Peckinpah's like ideas because looking at the making of the movie, this was very much a Steve McQueen production. Steve McQueen, he tried to get Peter Bogdanovich to direct. Bogdanovich was too busy, so he kind of threw him to the curb and got Peckinpah, and he wanted the original writer of the book that it's based on, Jim Thompson, to do a screenplay. But the book and the film are very different. There's a whole lost city in Mexico where criminals go to hang out after their scores. It's like El Dorado kind of a thing.
Weird.
And he even in the script there's this idea of they're getting to this amazing place where they can hide out forever. And then he read the script and was like, "You can't make that." So he threw him to the curb and got Walter Hill to do a screenplay. Which is the right move. I think Walter Hill's a great writer, but like you can tell that Steve McQueen had his mitts in every portion of this movie, so you can't really tell if it's kind of like anti-Peckinpah because Steve McQueen producing got final cut on the film as well. So it's a lot going on. I can't figure out whose movie it is more.
I think it's more of a compilation.
Yeah.
Because I think it's not Steve McQueen directing.
Yeah. But he got to make the final choices in the edit. So.
Right. Probably Sam like, why don't you do this and this and this, and I'll go have a shot of booze.
Yeah.
But fantastic stunts. Yeah. I don't know if you can do a Mustang through a front porch anymore. That's a great stunt, though.
You might not be able to, but gosh, I'd like to see it.
That was fun. You have kind of a sloppy time bank robbery, and that's the thing is it's not like Heat, where you emphasize a lot of the bank robbery and little micro leading up to the point. The bank robbery is just an A to B. Mm-hmm. I like the characters far. I don't care what they're going to do. I know they're not going to do good things, but I want to see how they're going to get away with it.
Yeah, I think part of that comes from the fact that the story is very paint by numbers, and that's not it's not a bad thing. It's a very simple story, but it hits most of the points, at least in the first half, that you expect, and then it's like, how do we escape? I see a lot of what would later be seen with Reservoir Dogs in this film. And you get the sensation that, Quentin Tarantino, when he wrote that film, said basically he wanted to shoot the diamond heist. He wanted to have that in the movie, but he couldn't afford that, so he shoots the parts that you can afford to do. That's kind of what this movie is, except they have the budget for the heist. So I think it's fair to have those two elements. I think it's more fun to watch something like this go wrong than it is to watch it go right. And be able to play with that fallout, because this movie is, the title alone says it. It is the getaway. It is the portion of it that we have to do now because we failed.
Right. And I think Ellen McGraw does a great job. I think she's perfect for this role because it's not that she's playing second down to Steve McQueen, but you understand the character's infatuation with him. She'll do anything for him.
Yeah, you're not even convinced.
Even take a slap for him.
You're convinced they love each other, but you're convinced that they don't like each other.
Yes,
and I think that's probably what comes to play there. And they have, what's nice is that you don't feel, I didn't feel, the background stuff with them. I didn't feel the affair in the movie because there is that really strained relationship. This movie, if anything, is a good lesson on maybe don't work with your spouse, because these are they worked on a job together that went south, and now it's like their entire relationship is hinging on the failure of their work, and it's really playful in how it does that.
It's interesting because they did do a remake of this movie with Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger. I actually went to the theater to see it, and after they made that movie, their relationship.
That's fair. Well, and I think they used Walter Hill's screenplay for that too. So I think it's the same movie pretty much. It's just shot again.
Mid-90s gloss.
And I can't remember ever seeing a movie remade that close using the same screenplay. They did it with Psycho.
Yeah.
They did it with
the Omen. Gus Van Sant, yeah.
The Omen had the same screenplay. It was just adjusted slightly. Carrie had the same screenplay. But again, all these movies were 30 to 40 years. This was 20. Between this film and the remake, and it's the same screenplay. You're not adding anything new to it then. There's not the technology hasn't changed enough in that time period. So it's like
super glossy mid-90s we did.
Yeah. And I haven't seen the remake. I only found out about it actually once we were talking about this movie. Then I looked up the remake.
It'd be interesting to go back to it because it's very. There's one scene that's very unforgettable, and it has nothing to do with cars. Oh, just gonna write that. It has a lot to do with Kim Basinger not keeping her clothes on. So.
Thinking about the other elements of it, the Quincy Jones soundtrack.
Yes.
Very different. Again, this was another thing. McQueen did not want the chosen person for the film, so he went and got Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones adds very different musical stylings to this movie. Again, if we're going to talk about the Western appeal of it, it has a very Shaft. It's got a very disco beat to it kind of movie.
Anticipating something.
Yeah. Yes. So it's I think that's what comes into play is there's a lot of elements that would make you think to yourself, is it a Western? But at the same time, the movie is steeped in a story that's a little more Western.
Modern. Yeah, there's some modern elements. The beginning, when he's in prison, I love this fantastic because they have this almost like a typewriter, the machines. And he's going through the mechanics of being in prison, and he's just building something to blow off. He's just ready to pop. In fact, he's so angst to blow off that he turns off his machine and turns it on. He's just, you got to punch something and and that element. Oh, then he makes an entire bridge and looks at it and he goes, the hell with that dude. Just
Yeah. He's kind of like at his point where I'm either going to go crazy or I'm going to figure it out. Like I'm going to have to choose one or the other.
He's right at that Cool Hand Luke moment where I better break out or I'm going to go nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking the whole time, because I went on like a marathon of Steve McQueen movies in preparation for this. And I'm thinking the whole
Good
time
man.
going, you made it through Papillon, you can do this. I'm there for him, but I think it's funny to see him opening up a film where he's in prison having just watched Papillon, thinking like, God, he just can't catch a break. But yeah, it's unique in that way that it's, you know, it presents us with a character who's getting out of jail. So we have to wonder, like, is he going to go clean? But the thing is, he's not getting out of jail with the choice to go clean.
No, his wife, his girlfriend slept with Ben Johnson. That's how he got parole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has to make, like, he doesn't get to make the choice, am I gonna go clean immediately? He has to do this job, then he can be clean. So it's like out of his hands whether or not he has to choose this life, because in order to get out of jail he has to be a criminal. And I don't see that happening too often, where like I'm able to get you out so that you break the law for me.
You've been nice in prison,
Yeah.
and role model. Now I'll go do some more crime.
Yeah, so that's something I can't remember seeing in any other movie. And I know it's a little change, it's a little difference, because in every movie where a criminal gets out of jail and is like, I'm not doing this anymore, and then like 5 minutes later, I'll do it one more time. Like, that happens all the time in those movies. But to have that choice taken away from Doc is really important.
Yeah. You want to have lunch on a boat down the stream?
If I see Ben Johnson there, I again, like, but that's the choice.
That's
that
really weird.
scene happens, and it could happen in a regular restaurant. It could happen. I mean, Godfather style. It could happen in like the back of the Italian restaurant.
With a bowl of oranges.
Or they can just do something different with it. You know, put it in an
It's
interesting.
very
place.
different, right? And that's why I retain it. It's such a weird location to have this conversation, but that's why I retain it.
Yeah, the only way that it could have been perhaps a little bit more bombastic was if they were in those little duck paddle boats talking, and like two boats.
That's how
just
we
kinda
meet
going
Rudy, right? That's how we
around.
meet Rudy. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's okay to play with the form in that way. You're changing up the location to make something memorable, because that scene's very much exposition. It's like, here, let me introduce you to these characters. Let me tell you what you're going to do. In the grand scheme of things, that scene doesn't matter, but it does.
But you retain it.
You know, it's like the scene in the car with Rudy, where it's just like, in the car, they're always showing them in the car traveling. We don't know where they're going. But what that scene does really well is it showcases that even though Rudy has kind of claimed Sally Struthers as Fran, taken her away from her husband, that he still doesn't treat her with any respect. He's like throwing the chicken wings at her, and she's like getting mad, and he's just like, I'm going to keep doing it because I can do whatever I want. It's those little moments where the movie stands on its own, even though it's telling a story we've seen before.
And it's a little bit like when you blow up the street.
Yeah.
And you have a helicopter point of view, which is only a few seconds, but you still got that point of view. You have Rudy when he's dead, but you have a shot, he shoots a gun, and he still doesn't flinch. That's fantastic work. Yeah.
One other thing, you mentioned that, yeah, that what I loved about this movie again too is going back to the choice that Doc has to make involving Rudy. The choice where he's like, I don't get to make the choice about breaking the law, but he makes the choice to show Rudy the bulletproof vest.
Yes.
And you think to yourself, would Rudy have been alive to cause trouble if he hadn't respected the guy he was working with enough to convince him to wear it? You know?
He never had to need it before.
He causes his own problems and his own almost demise. So
And
the
that's
whole
kind of-
movie hinges on his again failure to see what's going to happen.
It's kind of a great metaphor for all the characters. They cause their own problems with this.
Oh yeah, it's everyone in this
But
movie.
it's also their thumb the nose at anybody who tells them what to do.
Yeah, they cause their own problems, but the difference is the ones that we're supposed to like are the ones who cause their problems for the right reasons. You know, Ally McGraw, she makes the choice to sleep with Jack, Ben Johnson's character. She makes the choice to do that, but she does it to get him out.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can you blame her? How can you be mad at her for what she does because she did it to save you? It's it's those like ethical questions again.
Yeah.
Cookie cutter movie, but then we add in all of this extra flavor, all of these extra pieces. That's what makes it a classic.
Yeah. So, like I said, I've seen this many times. There's things that are just so unforgettable with this movie. There's some things that are great, memorable for me. That makes it, for me, a great movie. It's 50 years old. I think it's still under the shadows of The Godfather, came out in 72. So that, I mean, that's an accolade movie.
Yeah.
But I think it still retains its power, even
Yeah.
after all that time.
And I think the film is, like, for me, it was a very good movie that I don't think features the best McQueen performance. Having seen a bunch of the other stuff recently, like it's very much like kind of, you know, playing the part that he's known for at this point. He's in a rhythm. But then it's also, you know, looking at his performance, and then Ally McGraw, I'm not really convinced in her performance as Carol. She didn't even like her performance as Carol. But I felt, again, it was a very, doesn't get to do enough.
Yeah,
you know, she's like, she's
Very
doing
muted.
the story. Yeah, but she's
very
not really
muted.
playing it. But I think, like, there's the chemistry of the strain in them.
Yes.
And it might be because in the real world their relationship was forming, as in the film their relationship is breaking. I just think, like, it's such a colorful cast. You get Elda Thierry, you get Ben Johnson, who
cast,
I'm gonna always, like, have a moment where I see Ben Johnson in a movie and I'm gonna think Nick put me up to this. But I love Ben Johnson in all 3 movies we've talked about with him, so I'm not gonna get too mad about that. And it's so memorable with all the things that I hate, and I say that with love. You know, again, I don't like Elda Thierry in the movie, but I
But he's
really
so
love how much I hate him.
Yeah,
you know,
gotta have somebody
I love
really-
how much I hated Sally Struthers in this movie. I loved all the parts about it that I really, really hated, and that's the way I can say that I love the movie.
And I really, really love the shootout at the hotel.
The hotel shootout. I think my favorite scene is still the blowing up the car, and
Murdering inanimate objects. It's
Yeah.
my second favorite. Yeah.
And what was the other part I was really taken with was the film's like just it departs in this weird side story for a moment when the guy robs her of the case of money.
At the train station.
Yeah, and Doc has to get on the train and follow him basically on the train and get this money back from him. It's a really captivating little section of the movie that if you removed it wouldn't do anything. And so maybe that's the flaw of it, is that it's a scene in the movie that kind of distracts from the movie a bit.
Right. So
But
it's
I
like
still was
take
entertained
a
by it.
break from all the intensity and have this little go on a train a little. Get off the car, go on the train a little bit. Which
Yeah.
entices, I think, the Western kind of idea.
And I think that's because the actor that robbed them, I can't place his name, but he was going to play Rudy, and there was this whole mix up with, like, well, we can't have him playing Rudy, so we'll make this other character for him. I think they expanded that role. And again, it's like, I like the scene, but I think it's that one of those, like, kill your darlings moments where if you just took it out, I think it would just improve the overall speed of the movie, because it does feel like a lengthy stopping point.
It does.
So overall, like, if I had to say that would be my one flaw of the movie, is that things I liked could have been taken out still, but I was really captivated. I had a lot of fun watching it.
It's longer, yeah. It
Yeah.
still retains its power. It still kind of gives you a punch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you think about The Getaway? Is it your favorite Getaway movie? Because they made another one, so, like,
Oh,
maybe
God,
you like
yeah.
that more. I don't know.
You should.
Well, I've never seen it. I don't know what where do you stand on the film in your Sam Peckinpah ranking, or Peckinpanking? Where does it stand in your McQueen ranking? We'd love to hear more about that, and what films we should cover from that large collection of movies next. And one of the best ways you can do that is that Patreon. Check that link out.
True story. Steve McQueen and Ally McGraw had a house right next to Keith Richards in Malibu, and Keith Richards would never stop playing the music loud. And one day, Steve went over there, knocked on the door, and punched him dead in the face, and went back home. That is a true story.
It's a good
I
way
can
to-
see Steve McQueen like never giving you a warning. He just goes over there and.
You know, that's a good way for Steve McQueen to end up in jail, and we know he's been in jail a few times. That's the
Yeah,
next
right,
film
yeah,
right
yeah,
there.
yeah.
But thank you guys for joining us so much.
Yes.
We had so much fun talking this movie with you, so let us know what we should do next. Join that Patreon. Sacrifice a cup of coffee to help support the independent artistry of these two schmoes here.
Yeah.
And then check us out next week as well. We got new episodes Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And you can find all my film reviews on goatfilmreviews.com.
Hey, you can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts.
All right, we're going to get away for now, and we'll be back next time. We have more episodes this week. Join
Yes, we
us.
do.